So first, I want to thank Digital Catapult, Art Council England, and StoryFutures and CreativeXR for the invitation. And to Dawn's point, I really do not think it is misplaced national pride. I know I'm from San Francisco, but I have such a fond place in my heart for the UK because I've seen support in a meaningful, thoughtful, long-term way of the creative industries, and I am continue to be awed by it. I think it gives you the ability to be courageous and to try things, and that's how this industry is going to grow and mature over time. So today I want to talk to you a little bit about ILMxLAB, our journey as a group, and then in some ways it's also my personal journey, how I got here and why I'm so passionate about this space. Hopefully that will maybe provide some insight and learnings for your own adventures. So as most of you know, we at Lucasfilm come from a legacy of innovation. George Lucas developed one of the richest and deepest narrative universes ever brought to life. But he also stressed this culture of innovation, whether it be in creativity, technology, or business. We had to innovate in everything that we did. When I first started at ILM in the late 80s, we had just finished Willow, and we were in production on Indiana Jones and the Last Crusade. I happened to be on the same hallway as the 6 computer graphic artists. Now today we have more than 1,200 CG artists in 4 studios worldwide. So because of my background, Lucasfilm moved me around the company early on to help develop business plans and strategies for new and existing businesses. And one of those, which was called Lucasfilm Learning, was really going to be foundational to my career going forward. Lucasfilm Learning sought to combine storytelling, high-quality visuals, and meaningful interactivity to support educational multimedia experiences. And in order to do that back then, the way you did that was with a computer-driven Laserdisc player. This is pre-CD-ROM. We've come a long way. But the most significant and innovative prototype that we did was something called Paul Parkranger and the Mystery of the Disappearing Ducks. This was a collaboration produced with the Audubon Society and Apple Computer. And I wanted to share a tiny bit of the introduction because I think it has incredible relevance to what we're doing today. At the end of the day, it's basically a place-based experience that allows you to explore, discover, and imagine. You're effectively in this world, and you matter. Remember, this is 30 years old.
Welcome, friend. This morning, I heard the call of the wild. It was a long-distance call, actually. They need me out there over the horizon, and I must go. Tragically, I leave behind an unsolved mystery, the mystery of the disappearing ducks. Friend, you have to solve it. First, you need a little background, some foreground, and a lot of wet ground.
So that's just a little bit of the intro. But one of the other things I love about this project is not what it was, but how it was created. This was actually a prototype that was developed in collaboration with a high school design team. The target audience was middle school, so who better to design an experience than the high schoolers that have just been through middle school? We partnered the high schoolers with professional mentors in order to sort of make it more polished. But the idea came from them, this mystery format, this place-based format, and the character of Paul Parkranger. I think it's a really interesting model. I've talked to a few people in the room about, I would love to see this, a model similar to this implemented in the immersive field, because I think we really need to broaden the diversity of the talent base that's coming up, and I think this might be one way to do that. So we are an outgrowth of ILM, which is the visual effects division. And so I wanted to just start by taking a look at ILM's reel as it stood in 2015 when we launched ILMxLAB. But as we all know, the film business is more than 125 years old. It was in 1895 that the Lumiere brothers effectively opened up the first cinema box office. And we know how far filmmaking has come as a craft, as an industry, and really as a cultural phenomenon. Even the video games industry is more than 40 years old. But a few years ago, we had to start asking ourselves what was next. I really wanted to be a catalyst for change, for possibility. And around this time, I was introduced to a book that had a pretty profound impact on my thinking. It was called The Blue Ocean Strategy by W. Chan Kim and Renee Marbone. This is from 2005. And the premise is that we're not striving to outperform the competition in the existing industry, but rather to create a new marketplace or a blue ocean. Around that time, we saw new technologies that were emerging, same technologies as all of you are using, that we thought could potentially disrupt traditional forms of entertainment. We saw them as new platforms for expression, ways to convey emotion, and establish deep and intimate connections to story and place. Sometimes people ask, why does innovation in storytelling matter? It works pretty well in the film and television industry. I love this quote from Ursula K. Le Guin, which says, "There have been great societies that did not use the wheel, but there have been no societies that did not tell stories. Stories are as much a part of us as life itself, and so when there are new ways to tell stories, we feel we need to be there pioneering." So immersive entertainment became our blue ocean. And we founded ILMxLAB in 2015. When we did so, our goal was for people to truly step inside our stories in ways never before possible, and specifically to be inside of Star Wars. More importantly, we wanted to move from storytelling to this idea of story living. No longer is it one-way communication, but we now are in a world where you are the hero of your own adventures. So what should be our focus was the first question. And for us at ILMxLAB, we had two primary areas of focus. The first is location-based immersive adventures. This allows us to deliver scope and scale and to invoke all the senses because we control 100% of the environment. And certainly a lot of the projects that I've seen yesterday are attempting to do the very same thing. Second is original VR episodics. Here we're able to deliver deeper story through extended engagement, most likely delivered in the home. We try to continually undertake innovation experiments because we believe this is how we can learn, evolve, and push the state of the art. But we're pointing toward a future where our approach to storytelling is holistic, and we seek to create connected, complementary experiences where each experience on its own is fulfilling, but taken together, the whole can truly be greater than the sum of the parts. And it moves us toward this idea of story living. So since we were founded in 2015, we've developed a fairly robust portfolio of projects. And today I wanted to focus on innovation experiments, Star Wars Secrets of the Empire, the location-based adventure, and Vader Immortal. So how do we evolve the state of the art? We do it in the same way you all are doing it, by experimenting, by taking risks and trying something new. I mean, after all, we'd called ourselves ILMxLAB, and just to be clear, we're not a lab in the traditional sense, which is a cost center. We actually have to make a profit, and that will become important a little bit later. One of our very early real-time experiments was designed for the iPad. Essentially, we created a short 90-second cutscene that to most people looked like film. But what was revealed is that this was all running in real time, and you could actually go into the world and explore, and to some extent change some of the dimensions. This was several years ago. At the time, it required, one essentially equivalent to a very powerful computer in the cloud. So it wasn't cost effective in order to actually deliver this as a consumer experience, but we thought it was really interesting, and as the price of cloud computing comes down, I think this is a much more viable option. We also began to imagine a world where reality blended with fantasy. So as you all know, whereas VR lets you see a different world, AR lets you see the world differently. Much of our experimentation has in fact been in the mixed reality space, and in part it's because the kinds of experiences we aspire to with wearable glasses, that's sometime in the future when we'll have more significant adoption. But as a part of our collaboration with Magic Leap that began more than 4 years ago, we wanted to explore what it would be like to establish a relationship with a character in our world. So the story becomes our evolving relationship and how that matures over time. So rather than a story that's told over minutes or hours, it may be a story that unfolds over days, weeks, or even months, and therefore it really broadens the idea of the traditional storytelling boundaries. This is a short piece about Project Porg.
The story of Project Porg is that Chewbacca has left a device along with a Porg, and C-3PO has sent a message that explains how you can take care of it.
Oh my god.
Project Porg is an aspirational experiment, and it's important because we can spark people's imagination about what's going to be possible in the world of mixed reality.
Chewbacca suggests you try offering the Porg a treat.
Mixed reality places you at the center, and an experience can start in the home, continue throughout the journey, and culminate in this transformative destination.
So ultimately, the goal here is for the character and our relationship to have persistence. Your actions and choices matter, and the character responds to you in compelling and meaningful ways. So in contrast to VR, which offers the opportunity for scope and scale, that's one of its great strengths, mixed reality actually presents an opportunity for intimacy. And I had this interesting experience when we were getting ready to release this, and it was designed in 10-minute sessions, so you would do it over a course of days, and there were about 8 sessions. But I did them in succession, so I was in the glasses for about an hour and a half. And when you take off the headset with VR, there's that really sometimes jarring moment where you go from the world you were in VR to back to the real world. I was not expecting something like that to happen with mixed reality because I was already in our world. But what happened is when I took the glasses off, all of a sudden those virtual characters were no longer in the world with me. And I felt this incredible sense of loss, like you would if you had a pet that had been with you and all of a sudden the pet was no longer there. And I just thought that was an interesting moment, and it made me realize that there's a lot of potential in mixed reality for the same kind of depth of experience that we've been able to create in VR. Before Project Porg, we also explored location-based experiences in mixed reality. And one of the things we did was we recreated the scene from Hoth in a very large ballroom. I'm not going to play all of this, but I'm just going to play up to the part where it opens, the back wall opens.
We have spotted Imperial Orcus. All pilots to your stations. Intact repairs are 5.
So there's a mix of physical props and digital elements. So one thing I wanted to say about this, because there were a couple of projects yesterday that were using Magic Leap, and we were talking a little bit about field of view and how do you design design to a platform's strength. And so you can see from the two examples I just showed, Project Porg, we chose something very small that tends to not go out of your field of view when you've got the glasses on. We tried C-3PO, and it was a little bit jarring because essentially you'd lose the bottom half of him. And then with the location base, because we put you at a distance in a large room, we were also able to address the issues of field of view in another effective way by giving you the distance. And I noticed in the one with the dancers yesterday, which was really lovely, but it's small, so that's a lot of what you see in Magic Leap right now, and I think that that's a compelling way to approach the medium at this time. So given all this experimentation and mixed reality, I wanted to take an opportunity to look forward a bit. Our relationship with reality is fundamentally changing. So let's imagine what hide and seek looks like in a mixed reality future. The hall closet will be BB-8's favorite place to hide. Over time, this little girl will come to expect that because she knows BB-8 as a friend, as a true character companion. When she grows up, this little girl, who is now a woman, will carry that memory of how BB-8 always hid in the closet. This will remain her reality. It's a real memory. It's personal, and it's potentially lasting. And it's not something that has to be experienced alone. Many of us will have our own droid companions. So I've shared a few of our experiments, but when is the right time to move from experimentation to the real thing? Full-blown experiences that people pay money to do. First, I wanted to give some context to the industry and its evolution. This is called the Gartner hype cycle, if you're not familiar with it. When we started ILMxLAB, we were at the peak of inflated expectations. Now, I think we've moved past the bottom of the trough, and we're making our way up the slope of enlightenment. But what I would say is what we do right now is incredibly important because people are forming opinions about the potential of these mediums. And so the content that exists in the world will define how they think about that going forward. In talking to market researchers, and I follow a number of them in the XR space, in particular, Stephanie Lamas, who is with Superdata, which is owned by Nielsen in New York. They seek to find a point of reference in the technology adoption curve. And what they've likened VR to is the color TV. Color TV had a very slow adoption for the first 7 years until it hit an inflection point and moved up. And essentially what was happening is that people didn't know if they needed a color television because they had a black and white one. In our case, it's even a little bit more challenging with VR because in the color television scenario, people could look into a store window, see a color TV, and they knew exactly what they were getting. With VR, you have to get people to put the headset on before they can understand that this is something that is meaningful and that they really need. So I was asking Stephanie, where do you think we are in that 7-year adoption curve? And, we were sort of guessing that maybe we're in year 5 or so. But I think that in the 2021 or 2022 timeframe, VR may be on a trajectory for mass consumer adoption. Certainly mobile AR with using the phone has had a much more dramatic trend. So for VR only, you can see here that location-based software market is forecasted to be close to $1 billion in 2022. And most of the projects I saw yesterday were location-based. It's not huge, but it's also not small. So there is a market there. And in spite of the slower than expected growth, the XR market still promises to be very meaningful in the years to come. So if you look at the green column, which are AR, MR headsets, you can see that the foundation for the opportunity appears in the 2022 timeframe. And market researchers, again, primarily SuperData, see two key inflection points. One is the introduction, probably by Apple, but it could be Facebook or both, of a wearable MR device, which is anticipated in the late 2020, early 2021 timeframe based on what we read and what we know. And the second thing is generation 2.0 of the Oculus Quest, which is estimated in late 2021. So a tetherless all-in-one headset. So now back to ILMxLAB's foray into monetizable experiences. So I wanted to start with location-based. This was really the first financially viable opportunity. And we created Star Wars Secrets of the Empire, a hyper-reality experience in collaboration with The Void. This is an experience that you do with your family and friends in groups of 4, and it blends the physical with the digital world. Also, because we control all of the, we control the environment, we can evoke all of the senses, what you see, hear, feel, smell, and maybe eventually what you taste. So this is a trailer from the experience.
This is Mon Mothma. I have an assignment for you. The rebellion needs you, and we don't have much time. You must work together. You must not fail. In disguise, your team's mission is to recover Imperial intelligence critical to our survival.
You're with me. The rest of you, get on that skiff. Do your best to act Imperial.
Looks like you'll have to fight your way out.
What is that?
This could be a threat to our entire existence.
So what makes hyperreality special? First, it's the marriage of the physical world with the virtual worlds. So when you see, in a Void experience like this, when you see a wall in the digital world and you reach out and touch it, there's actually a wall there. So that one-to-one mapping actually causes your brain to really abide deeply into that reality. Realism also helps immersion. In our case, we were striving for near cinematic quality in hopes of making the mental transition from film to immersive as seamless as possible. One of the things that I wanted to point out here is that I talked about we came from ILM. When ILM creates those amazing shots, that can take 10 minutes, 8 hours, sometimes overnight to render a single frame of film. In these real-time experiences, we have to render at 90 frames per second, which means we have 11 milliseconds per frame. So to achieve cinematic quality is a true achievement. There are also transducers in the floor that were driven by audio created by Skywalker Sound, and this made the floors rumble. It felt as if you were really moving on this skiff. There were also fans, heaters, and scent generators that further enhanced the world. So you believed that you were in the hot, windy lava fields of Mustafar. I wanted to share some testimonials from guests who visited Secrets of the Empire at Downtown Disney. And I would like you to please listen for how they felt as if they were really in this world.
I've been wanting to step into a Star Wars movie for as long as I could remember, and I think getting to see that and touch that and feel that really put me in that film unlike anything else ever has, and it was a dream come true, really.
If you ever really want to be in Star Wars, the Void is where you're going to go to do that.
We got to be characters in the movie. You can't get that anywhere else.
You can't get it anywhere else. From the minute you walk in and you have the briefing from Captain Cassian, it's like you're in Rogue One.
I mean, you were walking right there where Anakin became Darth Vader, and it was incredible. It was transformative.
The moment when we picked up our blasters, and then the guy that we were with accidentally fired his, and so then all the alarms went off, and we're like, oh my God!
The thing Void does that's really cool is you reach out and you can actually touch the walls around you.
Okay, if you want to feel like you're actually in a Star Wars movie, you need to come do this.
If you've never experienced it, it's undescribable, so it's like, how do I describe this to you? You just have to go, you just got to do it.
So one of our most recent and definitely most ambitious projects has been Vader Immortal. It's a 3-part story series that was created in collaboration with Oculus for both the Rift and the Quest. We're incredibly excited about this because we believe that the Oculus Quest could actually be the catalyst for mass consumer adoption of VR. This is the trailer for episode 1.
You've caused us considerable inconvenience. In a moment, the Lord of this monolith will give you a task, a word of advice. Do not anger Vader.
Now that Vader's found you, he's in reach of enormous power. You must escape.
Grab my hand! I wonder what Vader is after.
It appears Vader has finally found his candidate. And our future is in your hands. Vader is here.
You are the one I've been searching for. Do as I command.
Is there any version of this plan that doesn't end up with us being dead?
So in Vader Immortal, we put you in Star Wars, leveraging VR's power of being there, that power of presence. You're at the center of your adventure, and your actions propel the narrative forward. The experience deepens through meaningful interactions with characters, the power of connection. Again, no longer is this one-way communication. You are in the world, and you matter. Story living. The interactive narrative experience is actually between 45 to 60 minutes, so in essence, it's the scope and scale of a television pilot. When we first explored creating Vader Immortal, we were acutely aware that there would be very high expectations. After all, Darth Vader was probably the most iconic character in the Star Wars universe. And in some ways, we had the weight of the company and the fan base to bear. We had to deliver the places, characters, and story all in a way that felt authentic. You had to believe you were in Star Wars. So throughout this process, you know, we kind of had this echo in the back of our minds, don't screw this up, ringing in our ears. And I have to admit, you know, I myself had many a sleepless night in the process. Actually, I continue to, because we haven't delivered episode 3 yet. In approaching Vader Immortal, we recognized that it was not a film, it was not a game, and it was not an attraction. But we could learn from all of these. We could borrow from each to mold a new type of experience. And to Oculus Studio's great credit, this was a journey they were willing to take with us. The good news is we knew we could deliver compelling stories across all of these existing mediums, and we had assembled a team with wide-ranging experience, so artists and engineers from film, TV, visual effects, games, animation, and attractions. But we knew that if we wanted to combine high-quality visuals and mix that with sound and compelling interactivity in a way that had previously not been attempted or achieved, that we had to learn from one another and develop a new shared language. There was really no template for this kind of experience. We had to approach design and implementation and even production in new ways. But the first step was the story, something we worked on with David S. Goyer of Dark Knight, Blade, and Call of Duty fame. ILMxLAB had created up to that point immersive pieces that were marketing tie-ins to some of the films. But Vader Immortal was intended to stand on its own as a consumer-facing, monetizable experience. It needed to be a fully fledged original Star Wars story in its own right, able to take its place in the canon alongside major TV and film projects. So as often happens, our initial path was not where we ended up. Our first tests put you in Star Wars as an observer, witnessing scenes and being taken through our story passively without a role. You were in effect a ghost. Our big aha moment came when we were realizing that given the power of VR, we needed to make you the focus. You had to be the central character. You had to matter. And although Darth Vader was extremely compelling and powerful, this had to be your story. Your unfolding relationship with Darth Vader then became the journey. We did an initial test when we were going to make this pivot, where Vader confronts you in the cell. So the door opens, Vader appears, you hear his breathing. He walks toward you, he looks you in the eyes, and addresses you. Honestly, it was so powerful that most people didn't realize he'd actually delivered any dialogue at all. They were just trying to process the feeling of looking up at Darth Vader. So that actually taught us something about pacing too, because you have to give people time, a little bit of time to absorb and breathe. Once we had a clear vision, though, we needed to have tools to share that new direction, not only with the team, but those responsible for the Star Wars franchise. And this was an example of the kind of graphic-based documents that we used. This really encapsulated all 3 episodes. But to develop the story arc, we listed the wish fulfillment opportunities and considered what VR was uniquely poised to deliver. Essentially, we determined it was to be in Star Wars, to engage with Vader, and to wield a lightsaber. So it required a highly iterative process. Again, it was not a film, not a game, and not an attraction, but it was a story whose depth came from engagement and interaction. So we moved away actually from a traditional script format, and we used a combination of art, words, and deep links in a script to capture the nature of the interactivity. As I said earlier, one of VR's great strengths is the power of connection to characters. And with the exception of Darth Vader, all of the key characters in our series were developed for these VR episodes. And as with film and television, the development has become a part of the Star Wars canon. Our droid companion experience, another in the long line of dramatic Star Wars droids, is Zoe, who is voiced by Maya Rudolph. From the first time we put on an Oculus Quest, we immediately understood being tetherless was potentially a game changer. We could take full advantage of designing in 360-degree space, particularly for interactive sequences and wielding a lightsaber. And as I said, wielding a lightsaber was understandably one of those Star Wars wish fulfillment opportunities. To that extent, we had a lot of our tech and creative development efforts were making the interaction truly compelling. And in case anyone was wondering, this is Erin Kellyman, the actress who played Enfys Nest in Solo, and quite the Star Wars, quite the lightsaber aficionado. But the key here was making sure that the lightsaber moments were truly in service of putting you into an authentic Star Wars story and propelling the narrative. One interesting outcome was the decision to break the experience into 2 modules. There's an interactive story module, and then there is a Lightsaber Dojo model. So in the interactive story module, you do use the lightsaber. You go through a little training exercise. You do use the lightsaber both as a tool and as a weapon. But what we were worried about is that people were going to get so caught up in the Lightsaber Dojo, they were not going to want to move on in the story. So we gave them an opportunity to do that by creating the Lightsaber Dojo module. And that has about 40 rounds of increasingly difficult lightsaber battle, literally. And I can only get to round 5. But for people that are gamers, which are the early adopters of these devices, it gave them what they were looking for too, which was this opportunity for replayability and achievement, etc. One of the things that I'm most proud of, though, is the quality of the execution and what we were able to deliver on a tetherless platform. There is no high-powered computer driving the experience. And this was really a fundamental component of the collaboration between Oculus's engineering team, ILMxLAB's team, and Epic's Unreal team. Together, we worked to make sure that we could get every ounce of possibility from the platform. And I don't think Oculus even knew what that device could ultimately do. But that's how we were able to deliver things like cinematic lighting, cloth simulation, multiple characters, and cool visual effects. All were in service of driving the story forward and creating that sense of authenticity. But in addition to our creative and technical goals, we also wanted to establish the foundation for a sustainable business endeavor for what was effectively a new genre of VR storytelling. Like television, we chose an episodic format for reasons of pacing, pricing, and extended engagement. And while it's still early for the VR market, episode 1 and now episode 2 seem to be making meaningful inroads. So just to continue the story, here's the trailer for episode 2 that was released 2 weeks ago at Oculus Connect 6. We remain in production on the 3rd and final episode.
The Force is more powerful than you can possibly imagine. Follow me, and I will instruct you in its ways. You will need the Force if you are to survive the path ahead. Your anger makes you stronger.
Incredible, Captain! How are you doing that?
You can unlock the secrets of life and death. Defend yourself. Impressive.
Catch me up. I don't understand why you never mentioned that you had the Force.
Don't move.
earlier I spoke about this idea of connected stories, and indeed Vader Immortal represents a start to that holistic narrative ecosystem. We actually set up Vader Immortal with the Void experience, Star Wars Secrets of the Empire. So in Secrets of the Empire, the mission took place on at an outpost on Mustafar, and you could see Vader's castle in the distance. As we moved to Vader Immortal, the VR story series, you went into the castle and engaged with Vader on his home turf. So from a narrative perspective, you will now discover what Darth Vader's bigger plan is. So basically, that's the combination from the Void experience to the in-home. And now what we're looking at is creating a short, monetized, location-based pop-up experience leveraging the Lightsaber Dojo. These could be in movie theaters, malls, arcades, etc. And each of these reinforces the other. This would be an easy way for people to engage with the Oculus Quest, and it might, and also get a taste for Vader Immortal. So I think thinking about, especially if you're working in a location-based space, is to think about ways to sort of create a little mini ecosystem around your experience where one thing reinforces the other is a good strategy to explore. So now why? Why do we create? Why do we make ourselves vulnerable? Why do we so often bare our souls? And for me, it's because we see smiles. This was my family in Whittier a year ago for my niece's graduation. I bought 8 tickets to Secrets of the Empire. I had 8 people from ages 21 to 85. We had 3 generations represented, none of whom had ever experienced anything like this. All of whom could not stop talking about what it was like to go to a galaxy far, far away. Also, because sometimes people see what we sought to achieve. For those of you that can't read it, wow, wow, wow. I just finished playing through this and I still can't wipe this stupid grin off my face. Amazing storytelling that can only be done in VR. Can't wait for episode 2. One of the things we were really honing in on with the feedback was whether people recognized that we were trying to tell a compelling story. This was not about creating a game. Another reason is because technology can truly transport you in new and wonderful ways, because it can change your perception of self.
Thank you so much, Vicki. I think we have a time for a few questions if there are some in the room. Please wait for a microphone if you have one. Questions?
I bet you can shout.
Thought about the idea of the voyeur, people purely just watching, not interacting?
We did, and for us, because we were developing in real time, which gives us the opportunity for interactivity and for acknowledging your presence, we actually went fairly far down that path. And we just decided for what we were trying to do, it was important to put you in the center of that experience. There was a question there.
Hi Vicki, thank you for what was a really insightful, brilliant masterclass. Thank you. But quick question about your decision to make the Immortal Vader a 45-minute, 60-minute piece. Did you do quite a lot of user testing to figure what people felt about experiencing pieces for that long?
I would love to say yes. It was based on a lot of research, but we really tried to figure out. We had to map out the entire 3-episode series and then break it into logical sort of individual episodes. And we felt that we didn't want it to be too long because there's still this issue about what is the period of time that an average user, so not a gamer, but an average user wants to spend in the headset. And we sort of thought that 45 to 60 minutes was in the right ballpark. Actually, episode 2 is a little shorter, and I'm not sure what episode 3 is going to be. We do a tremendous amount of user testing, though, as we get into it and understand if the interactions are working. Are they understanding the story? Do they understand the dialogue and pacing and so forth? So it'll be interesting to see. I mean, one of the challenges, part of the reason I love this space is because I'm not a gamer, and I believe this is potentially very interesting to people who love stories and want to experience stories in another way. But it's true that the early adopters are, in fact, generally gamers. So one of the criticisms of Vader Immortal has been that it's been too short. And we tried to sort of compensate for that somewhat by having the Lightsaber Dojo, which actually, if you've tried it, you know, I mean, it's probably, people say 3, 4, 5 hours worth of experience. You couple that with a 45-minute to 60-minute premium quality experience for $9.99, it seemed like a good value to us. But it is interesting because, you know, again, gamers have an expectation of AAA games, 40 hours of content, usually though for about $39, $49, $59. But anyway, it's just something that we've had to be okay with as we're, you know, sort of trying to create a new art form. And then we have a couple over here, and Maddie.
Sorry, who had the question?
Oh.
Sorry, who had the question?
Is that much better? Really good talk, thank you. I just wondered, in terms of, we talked about presence and the encounter with Vader, and shamefully I haven't done Vader Immortal yet, but I'm definitely going to go and do it now. I wonder if you're looking into speech recognition so that you'll be able to actually converse with characters in the Star Wars universe.
Yeah, I'll tell you some of the things. I didn't include this in my talk, but some of the things I'm excited about for the future. That is definitely one of them. Increasing the nature of the interaction with characters through AI, speech recognition, all of those kinds of technologies. Another thing I'm excited about is the possibility of personalizing the experience with by using biometric data. One of the things we're doing a little short test on is if you could use a smartwatch and your heart rate. So if you can keep your heart rate down, you can use the Force. So I think there's some interesting applications. And then the third thing is this idea of persistence. And I was talking to somebody about this late yesterday, is that once you can have persistence across experiences, because a lot of times when I talk about being in a world, sometimes people go to an MMO, and that's actually not what I'm talking about. I'm talking about individual experiences that are designed in such a way that it creates this much more holistic engagement, but having persistence so that there's a recognition when you did one thing and it's reflected in another, and it might change the world in a way not only for yourself but for others. I think that's a really interesting space too. So those are the areas I'm excited about.
Hi, that was really fascinating, and I get that. I mean, it's great brand extension, and I get that you need to make money on it because the research costs must be out of this world. But what are your thoughts on how this can be used on new content? Do you think there always needs to be recognizable characters? You know, for people who want to be moving forward with this kind of technology and storytelling, but that they're not about Star Wars.
Yeah, I think that we're very fortunate to work with a story universe like Star Wars that is recognizable with a huge fan base. I think the role that we can play in the industry is to help push the adoption. This is why Oculus, joined forces with us, because they wanted to sell quests. Once quests are in the hands of a large body of people, those people are going to want all kinds of content, not just Star Wars and not just big IP. They just want good, compelling content. So I think the key right now is to get the devices in the hands of consumers, and hopefully we're helping pave the way. But I really believe that as that adoption grows, there will be tremendous opportunity for well-designed experiences that are not recognizable IP. And I actually think it's an interesting place to actually start developing IP, because it's not quite as expensive as undertaking, well, it's definitely not as expensive as undertaking a film or a television show. You know, imagine if you created something in VR that actually could be extended into other media if it takes off.
Fantastic. Thank you so much, Vicki. Thank you for doing our masterclass today.
Thank you. Well, and I'll be around, so if you have other questions.
Thank you so much, Vicki and StoryFutures Academy, for organizing this amazing masterclass